Hey guys, welcome back to NerdCrave. So I've got with me today Kaz from the Canadian Cafe. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. How you do today, NerdCrave?
Oh, awesome. Glad to have you on again. It's been a while.
It has been.
So
Um,
the reason why I called you on here today is because there's been a lot of debate and for the most part fairly constructive debate recently in video game news about the potential of video game prices rising from $60 to $70 in US prices, which is going to push games pretty close to the $100 mark in Canadian prices where we're from. So
mhm.
you made a really in-depth comment that really knocked it out of the park on the Facebook group Console Purist, and I just
Mhm.
wanted to bring you in here to kind of talk about that and get your perspective because I think you had some really interesting points that I think a lot of people would probably benefit from hearing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to make the comic because I've not worked in the industry obviously, but I've learned a lot about the industry when I was sort of trying to get into it. I wanted to learn game development back when I was still in high school, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I tried to learn as much about the industry as I could.
Yeah.
One of the best YouTube channels that I watched back then was called Extra Credits, and it's a lot of people that did work in the industry giving us information, almost insider information, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of my views come from. Um, so basically, the premise is that there is a lot more costs that go into games and game development than we see and we know about. Uh, we even hear about that a little bit in the book Console Wars that you had recommended a couple of weeks ago. There, I'm getting towards the end of it now. It's a really fantastic read. I'm glad I actually took your advice on that one.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of hidden costs, and it's not even so much to do with a single game's development in itself. It's to do with the online features, the back end, the servers, the employees, the politics, even with shareholders. That's the premise of what my views are based on.
Well, and I think sometimes too you see kind of Hollywood pricing in effect sometimes with these games too, where they claim they've got $100 million budget or something, and but really like how much more than that or how much less than that is sometimes the marketing for these games is just over the top, and just the marketing alone can be tens of millions of dollars as well.
Well, exactly. I was just doing a little bit of research, kind of prepping for this here. Final Fantasy VII, way back on the PS2. PS2, yeah. That was
PS1.
a PS1, eh? Okay,
Yeah.
wow. Older than my recent time, I guess.
Yeah.
But even Final Fantasy VII had like a $45 million budget for development alone, but then it had a $100 million promotion budget for just the promotion.
Yeah.
And you have to think, well, that's $150,000
Million.
that they put into a game. $1 million, sorry, that they put into a game.
Yeah.
And how much do they really make back? I mean, quite a bit. Obviously, it's still enough for them to remake the game today. But
Yeah, probably one of the most successful games of all time, or maybe close to it. I mean, obviously nothing like Minecraft,
but it was very influential on the genre, and it's still being made to this day. With the Final Fantasy VII remakes, and
yeah,
but you really have to think about the money. Where did the money go that was made from the game originally? What those developers, the money that the developers made, has that money been spent on new games, to develop new games in terms of the profits, and has that money just gone into some shareholder account? Likely, it's been spent on new games and the development and marketing of new games.
yeah, or at least some portion of it. But
Well,
you make a really good point, though. Like, there's so many extra costs, especially with these AAA games. Like, it's totally understandable, and I would not expect, the major crop of indie games to all go up to $70. I mean, I think it's perfectly reasonable that when we're getting physical copies from limited run, like I'm actually working on a video right now I'm going to release tonight or tomorrow about LRG3, the limited run feature event that they had yesterday, and they announced some incredible games. But if you pre-order a limited run game, you get it for $30 plus shipping, works out to about $50. And I feel like that's a pretty reasonable price to pay for a physical, indie game. But when you get into some of these AAA titles, they almost all have an online component that requires having some kind of not only standalone servers, but people to manage those servers. You've got people to handle complaints, like people to handle account bans and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. There's customer service. There's maintenance of these machines, these servers. If any servers need to be updated or even physically updated with processors or new hard drives or whatever, the company has to pay for those new parts. If a hard drive blows, they need to replace that hard drive. And that, I mean, a hard drive isn't necessarily the most expensive thing in the world, but it's about a good hard drive is about the same price as a game these days.
Well,
So
and I mean, if you have, 15,000 hard drives
it racks up.
in a server farm or something, and they all need to be updated, or whatever the case, maybe they're renting server space from like Google or Amazon or something, but they still
But then
have to
they're still
pay.
paying for that.
They have to still
Exactly.
have to pay Amazon to maintain those servers, and they still have to have the customer service personnel and all that kind of stuff. So. I think it is very legitimate. And see, the point that I've been making for a couple of years now, actually, is that we're all getting so sick of microtransactions in games and not just DLC, but oftentimes day one DLC. So you buy a game and you're only getting half the game on day one, and instantly, as soon as you put it in the machine, there's a DLC available. And sometimes that DLC is even locked on the disc. Like, you pay for the DLC and it doesn't even download because it's already on the disc waiting for you to pay that extra $25 or $30.
Yeah.
And it's like these practices really piss people off. But developers are obviously saying, when they come out with something like a new Call of Duty or something like that, they're obviously telling us that they want about $150 from us. If you factor in the $60 to buy the game, and then a season pass is $30, $40, $50, or individual DLCs will be $25, $30 times 3 or 4 in the first year, let's say. They really seem to want that kind of $150 plus from us. So what do we as a consumer do about that? Because I don't think the market is going to tolerate $150. Do you really think raising the price $10 is going to really help the developers, or is it really just a kind of a cash grab?
Well, I think it really will help the developers. I mean, you're saying $150, but when it comes down to it, who's all going to buy that DLC and all the microtransactions? Not everyone playing will. A lot of the money made off of that DLC and the microtransactions are the whales of the market, the people that are willing to put in the thousands of dollars into a game. And so if everybody is paying that $10 for that brand new game and they make the same number of sales, same number of units, then, instead of making, $30 from a third of the market, they're going to make $30 from the whole market but it'll just be $10 per person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I just wonder about the economics of it. Like, is $10 really enough? Like, I feel like in this day and age, to me, a AAA game, and when I say AAA game, I mean like something really big budget that I would want to play. Like, if I had a PS4 at the moment, which I don't, but, Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn,
yeah.
God of War, Last of Us Part 2. Like, these are the experiences I would be willing to pay $100 for these experiences if I knew that I was getting the whole package and there was nothing else I had to worry about. I'd be willing to pay that $100 Canadian, which kind of works out to the $70 American.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm already willing to put the money into a game if I know I'm going to like it, if I know it's going to be a good game and it's going to be a full game, not, locked behind a paywall in some aspect. When it comes down to it, I mean, Nintendo has a pretty decent, I mean, with the Switch and the eShop, things have been getting a little more shaky on the quality side, but the main first-party Nintendo games, that the quality's there. You're not going to have to worry about being locked behind a content paywall. I just went out and bought Ring Fit Adventure, and that was $99.99. I mean, that comes with a couple of accessories, of course, but it's still a $100 game at the end of the day, and it's not even really the biggest game-wise. It's a fitness game, right? But I would have easily paid that for Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey. There's no reason why they don't deserve that for a game of that quality, and I would say that something like Horizon Zero Dawn or the next Horizon game coming up for the PS5, or anything of that caliber, deserves the extra funding by the consumer.
Well, I tend to agree with you, and it makes me mad when people are, freaking out. No, screw them, boycott this company, boycott that company, we're never buying games from them again, $70, this is ridiculous. Like, you know what? you pay, if you go to a movie, you pay $15 for the ticket, and you pay $25 for two people's, so say two people go to the movie, that's $30 for the two tickets. You're paying at least another $25 for popcorn and drinks. So that's $55 for two people to go see a movie for 2 hours. So, like, is a 20 or 30 hour video game, or in the case of some JRPGs, 50, 60, 100 hours of premium entertainment not worth, significantly more than 2 hours of entertainment?
Well, exactly. I 100% agree with that. Like, the amount of entertainment you're getting for the price is it's ridiculously cheap. As long as you're enjoying the game for more than 2 hours, you're getting your money's worth.
And the thing is, this price, like that $70, they're talking about US dollars, that $70 really only applies to the early adopters, those people who go out and buy it in the first couple weeks after launch. Because GameStop, EB Games, they're going to be having second-hand copies within a few weeks that are going to drop 10 or 15 bucks, and within 6 months the game's going to be half price.
Well, exactly, and that's another point that I had made when I had made that comment on the Console Purist group. At the end of the day, 6 months from now, a year from now, almost any game, barring Nintendo, is worth like half the price. I can go and buy Spider-Man or God of War for like 20 or 30 bucks now, Canadian.
Yeah, exactly.
That's absolutely ridiculous that a AAA game I can buy basically new for half the price.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, too, with my collection, I probably wouldn't have gotten around to it until now. I still wouldn't be playing it for another year, probably.
Yeah, the backlog is real, right? And I mean, I've seen a lot of people comment on that, too. With with the backlogs that we all have, it's really not that much of a problem, except for those games that really have a big online community, the Destinies and the Call of Duties of the world, where you want to, get in on the ground floor with these games before everybody gets so leveled up or whatever, right? But for the rest of those games out there, I really don't feel like it's all that important to have it on launch day. You might as well wait 6 months, get it cheaper. Especially for something that's story based, like say, the recent Star Wars game that just came out, or Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War. Like I guess I don't know if they have an online component in God of War, but it's probably not all that important to the game.
It's like Dark Souls. There's online, but it's not really.
Yeah, like I haven't really played it, so I don't know because I'm not really a PS4 guy, but. Taking the Nintendo Switch into account, I'm a little bit slower to buy those $79.99 games. Like, there's quite a few of the tentpole games on the Switch that I haven't bought yet. I haven't bought Breath of the Wild because I already have it on the Wii U. I desperately want to play the game again, and I want to play it on the Switch, but I'm just not in that much of a hurry to spend the $80 because I know I will eventually find some kind of a deal, even if it's like $60 used or something on Facebook or Kijiji or whatever. But the games that I'm really buying so much of on the Switch are the indie games that I'm picking up for $25, $30, $40 a piece. And there's some fantastic experiences to be had at that price point too. So people don't have to feel like just because the AAA games are going up to $80 that they're being priced out of gaming. Because they're not. There are still so many other options.
Well, and on top of that too, the reality of being priced out of gaming, it's an extra $10. Like, what is that? If you have to work another hour at your job so that you can afford to play this game, is that really gonna ruin your month or your year when you finally get that 80-hour game that you get to invest all your free time into? Just because you work that extra hour at work?
I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal for the casual gamer that buys one game every month or two just to play and put on the shelf. It's really going to affect collectors who want to buy every single major release on a system as it comes out on release day. It's definitely going to cut into the budget. It could potentially cost hundreds a year more. But I think for the average person, I really don't think $10... I mean, we've seen game prices fluctuate. I was watching a John Hancock video on this exact topic maybe a week or so ago. He was chatting with somebody, and he was kind of saying, we've seen video game prices fluctuate from the $40 to $50 range up to the $70 and $80 range, even as far back as like the Super Nintendo and the N64 era, where we've seen things at the $70 and $80 price point before, and it's come down. It's only these last kind of 2 to 3 generations that we've seen, since the kind of Xbox 360, that sort of thing, that we've seen this really steady $60 a game. So, is it? I don't think it's unusual. Certainly, it's not unprecedented in history. And considering the fact that a Nintendo game in 1987 would usually cost about $50 to $60, when people were making.
All, eh?
Well,
I honestly heard it was like $80, and that was in
some of
those
them,
times.
Some of them were because there was fluctuation in the pricing back then. Not every game was the same price. And even at different stores, different games would be different prices sometimes. But, you could buy a pretty normal game for 60-ish bucks on the NES or the Super Nintendo, for the most part. There was some that were a bit more expensive than that. But my point is, like, everything else has gotten so much more expensive in the past 30 years. If you look at how much money people were making, minimum wage in 1987 was like $2.50 an hour. Now minimum wage is like anywhere from $11 to $15 an hour, depending on where you live. Expenses are higher. I mean, rent in 1987 was like $200-300 a month. Now it's $1,000 a month. Buying a house was like 30-40 grand back then. Now it's 300 or 400 grand. Depending on where you live, maybe
easily
more.
Yeah.
So, I would not be surprised if game prices did go up, because it just makes sense. It's just inflation. They can't stay the same price forever. They just can't.
Exactly. At this point in gaming, they're basically at an all-time low. I mean, I guess we got spoiled, within a couple of generations ago. I heard like PS2 games were down at like $40 basically, and then they had like risen up to where we are now at about $60. And now just going up to $70 makes sense. But again, if they had dipped down from Nintendo's, $80 or $60, whatever it was back then, and dipped down to that $40 because of the PlayStation and PS2, and now we're just seeing that rise again, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, like it honestly, like I'm not upset at all. Like, inconvenienced, yes, but if it's for the good of the industry, if everybody can adopt a little bit higher pricing and maybe cool it a little bit on these microtransactions, I don't mind microtransactions in the right setting. If you're getting something that is, useful for a few extra bucks or whatever like that you can shortcut, as long as it's not a pay-to-win scenario. If it's basically just shortcutting some grinding, something you could have got in the game if you wanted to grind, but you just want to get a better gun in Call of Duty or something like that for an extra $10 or something. I have no problem with that. But for the most part, I want all the content to be there, and I think this higher price could make that happen.
Well, exactly. It'll make it easier for the developers to sort of like fight the shareholders, so to speak, saying, well, you're getting an extra $10 million on our game because our game sold a million units at $10 extra. $10 million. Let's not put the microtransactions in that would make that $10 million, or that day one DLC, or whatever may have you.
Well, I don't know. So, we don't really know for sure that this is going to happen. I mean, this whole story came out of a leak that NBA 2K21 was going to release at $70, but we don't really know, it's possible that Sony particularly is watching this story really closely and trying to determine what they're going to do. But, do you think that that's where we're going to go at this point, or do you think this is just a rumor?
It ultimately makes sense. We won't know until we hear official confirmation, obviously.
We don't even know what the consoles are going to cost yet. It's ridiculous.
Well, exactly. I could easily see everything being a lot more expensive this generation. The price has always been expensive to get into games, but it's been almost seemingly lower with this past generation.
Yeah.
But just between all the background costs that we don't see, even on top of the software licenses like the Adobe, you have to think of even Adobe for the suite. It's like $600 Canadian a year for one person, let alone a team of employees, right?
Yeah, they probably have some kind of corporate package or something, but
even still,
yeah,
that's still got to be at least a couple $1,000s
yeah,
a year.
just for one
And
little piece of software for like Photoshop and Premiere and stuff like that.
yeah,
Never
exactly.
mind like whatever expensive, and like you mentioned too, like licensing fees for music. You got to pay for the music. You got to pay
Mhm.
for. Sorry, what else? Oh
Um,
yeah, the game engine. Like
well,
if you don't
exactly.
design your own game engine, you may have to pay to use Unreal or
Yeah,
something.
you have to pay, and if you are paying to or building your own, you have to pay to build your own, and that takes a lot of time.
Development time and cost, yeah.
Exactly, which it's way more expensive to develop your own. So I could easily, yeah, I do think that this would be the generation where we see increased game costs. I also wouldn't be entirely surprised if all the backlash causes this generation to keep the price at $60. But I honestly think it's about time. It's about damn time.
It's really, nobody likes things to get more expensive, but I think this is completely, at some point it's unavoidable. The prices of everything in our life has gone up, from milk to gasoline to donuts. Everything has got more expensive, and video games have pretty much been this way for like 20 years, 15 to 20 years they've been this price.
Mm-hmm.
The last two generations, particularly anyway. So, you know, at the end of the day, there's really not much you can do about it, and you might as well just get used to the idea, because if it's not this generation, it's definitely going to be the next generation. If we even see a next generation after this one. But anyway, guys, so please let us know in the comments. We'd both like to know what your opinion is. Are you prepared to pay $70 for a new video game, or will you be waiting until it's 6 months old before you pick it up at that price? Let us know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified every time we put up a new video. And hey guys, stay classy.